The gunshots rang out in Midtown Manhattan, echoing off the glass walls of a hotel entrance. Security cameras captured the scene. Brian Thompson, CEO of United Healthcare, struck outside the building. Nearby, a man with a backpack slipped into the crowd. His name was Luigi Nicholas Mangione. Mangione was born in 1998 in Towson, Maryland, into a wealthy and well-connected family whose fortune was rooted in Baltimore's high-end real estate market. He grew up in privilege, attending the Gilman School, one of the region's most prestigious private institutions, where he graduated as valedictorian in 2016. From there, he went on to the University of Pennsylvania, earning dual degrees in engineering and computer science. After college, he worked as a data engineer, including a role at TrueCar that allowed him to live in multiple cities, among them Honolulu, Hawaii. By early 2024, he was traveling solo through East and Southeast Asia with only a backpack, visiting countries like Japan and Thailand. In November 2024, his mother contacted the San Francisco Police Department to report that the family had not heard from him since July. 3 weeks later, authorities accused him of the Manhattan shooting. Investigators found a handwritten note in which Mangione explained his actions as a message to the healthcare industry. The 262-word note began, "To the feds, I'll keep this short, because I do respect what you do for our country. To save you a lengthy investigation, I state plainly that I wasn't working with anyone." This was fairly trivial. Some elementary social engineering, basic CAD, a lot of patience. Prosecutors say Mangione planned the act meticulously, following Thompson for several days beforehand. They also say ammunition at the scene was marked with phrases criticizing insurance practices. A 5-day search ended in Altoona, Pennsylvania, on December 9, 2024, where Mangione was found with an unregistered firearm, false identification, and the note. He now faces federal and state charges, including unlawful use of a firearm, following a person with intent to harm, first-degree intentional ending of life, and terrorism-related offenses. In court, Mangione pleaded not guilty. His lawyers claim constitutional violations, including allegations that private talks with his attorneys were secretly monitored. The case has drawn national attention. Some view him as a man trying to expose flaws in the U.S. healthcare system, while others condemn the act as unjustifiable harm. Supporters have staged protests and even sold merchandise with his name, though much of it was later removed from online stores. As of August 2025, he remains at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn without bond. His trial has yet to begin, and if convicted, he could face the most severe penalty under U.S. law. Next, a former pro athlete whose money problems exploded into a tragedy. Daniel Joseph Serafini was born in 1974 in San Francisco, California. He was once a rising star in Major League Baseball. In the 1992 MLB draft, he was chosen 26th overall. During his career, he played for teams like the Minnesota Twins, Chicago Cubs, and Colorado Rockies. He earned more than $14 million while playing. But after leaving baseball, his life took a difficult turn. He went through a messy divorce. Some of his investments failed. He also owned a bar that lost money. By the end, he owed around $300,000. These struggles would eventually lead to a chain of tragic events. On June 5, 2021, Serafini went to the Lake Tahoe home of his in-laws, Robert Gary Spohr and Wendy Louise Wood. He stayed hidden for almost 5 hours. When they arrived, he confronted them. Robert lost his life instantly from a close-range shot. Wendy was seriously hurt but survived. Their 2 young grandchildren were in the house at the time and saw the chaos. In 2023, Wendy's family said she could no longer cope with the emotional pain from that day and ended her own life. Investigators later found threatening messages from Serafini. In one, he wrote that he would get rid of them one day. These messages were sent just days before the incident. Security footage also showed a hooded figure entering the home, which helped confirm his involvement. The reason appeared to be money. Serafini had been in a $1.3 million dispute with his in-laws over a ranch renovation. On the day of the shooting, his in-laws had also given $90,000 to his wife, Erin. Prosecutors said that Serafini depended on their money and wanted a way to end his financial troubles. Samantha Scott, a close friend of Erin and the family's babysitter, was also involved. She drove Serafini to and from the home. She also saw him test a homemade silencer before it happened. Later, she made a deal with prosecutors to testify against him. She admitted to helping after the incident and was charged as an accessory. The trial started in 2025. Prosecutors showed strong evidence, including phone records, digital data, and witness statements. The jury found Serafini guilty of planned taking of a life, attempted taking of a life, and burglary in the first degree. They also found special circumstances, such as waiting and hiding and committing the act during another serious offense. His sentencing is set for August 18, 2025. He could face the rest of his life in prison with no chance of release. The next individual sold million-dollar homes by day and hid bodies on his own land by night. Todd Christopher Kohlhepp was born in 1971 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. His parents separated when he was 2 years old. He grew up with his mother, Regina Tague, in South Carolina and Georgia. In 1976, his mother married Carl Kohlhepp, who became Todd's stepfather. Reports later said Todd had a tense relationship with his stepfather. He often wished to live with his biological father, even though he had not seen him in 8 years. From a young age, Todd showed troubling behavior. He often acted aggressively toward other children. He damaged their belongings and was removed from the Boy Scouts for bad behavior. At 9 years old, he started counseling. Therapists described him as explosive and overly focused on adult topics. His actions also showed cruelty toward animals. He shot a dog with a BB gun. He poured bleach into a goldfish bowl, ending the fish's lives. These early behaviors were warning signs of the harmful path he would later take. At 15, while living in Tempe, Arizona, Todd forced a 14-year-old girl to go with him at gunpoint. He took her to his home, tied her up, and covered her mouth with tape. He then acted inappropriately toward her and threatened to harm her family if she spoke about it. He was taken into custody and faced charges for taking the girl against her will and inappropriate conduct. In 1987, he admitted guilt to the taking against will charge. He was given a 15-year prison sentence. Todd spent about 14 years in prison before being released in 2001. While serving time, he earned a degree in computer science. Later, he managed to get a real estate license in South Carolina, even though he was on the registry for offenders. After his release, Todd settled in Spartanburg County, South Carolina, and started a real estate business. Outwardly, he appeared successful. But between 2003 and 2016, he committed multiple fatal acts. On November 6, 2003, Todd went into Superbike Motorsports in Chesney, South Carolina. He used a firearm to take the lives of 4 people: Beverly Guy, Brian Lucas, Scott Ponder, and Chris Sherbert. Later, he admitted to these acts and said that once he began shooting, he continued until it was over. In August 2015, Todd ended the lives of Megan Coxey and her boyfriend, Johnny Coxey. Their remains were later found buried on his land. On August 31, 2016, Todd forced Charlie Carver and Kayla Brown onto his property. He used a firearm against Charlie and hid his remains. Kayla was chained inside a metal storage container for more than 2 months. She was rescued on November 3, 2016, when a search of Todd's property uncovered her. The rescue led investigators to find the remains of Megan and Johnny Coxey. Todd also confessed to the 4 lives lost in the Superbike Motorsports case. In a letter from prison, he wrote, "Yes, there is more than 7, hinting there could be other victims." He also claimed that some of his harmful acts happened in other states. In May 2017, Todd admitted guilt to 7 counts of taking lives, along with charges of taking someone against their will and inappropriate conduct related to Kayla Brown. The agreement meant he would not face capital punishment. On May 26, 2017, he was given 7 life sentences with no chance of release, plus 60 more years for the other charges. The deal was made to give closure to the families and avoid a long trial and appeal process. Up next is a software creator whose life of privilege ended in a headline no one saw coming. Hans Thomas Reiser was born in 1963 in Oakland, California. His parents were Ramon Reiser and Beverly Palmer. Hans grew up in a family with a strong academic background. From an early age, he showed signs of being highly intelligent. His education, however, did not follow the usual path. Before turning 14, he left junior high school. Instead of continuing in school, he focused on computers and software development. In the late 1990s, Hans moved to St. Petersburg, Russia. There, he met Nina Sharonova, a Russian-born doctor specializing in obstetrics and gynecology. Nina was working as an interpreter for a service that introduced women to men from other countries. She and Hans began a relationship that led to marriage. The couple had 2 children. Nina also became involved in some of Hans's technology projects. But their marriage faced serious problems. They eventually separated, leading to disputes over custody of their children and financial matters. At the time he was taken into custody, Hans was well known in the tech world. He had developed the Riser FS file system, which was used in Linux operating systems. Many people saw him as both a talented and controversial figure in the open source community. Hans's legal troubles came from one deeply tragic incident involving Nina. In September 2006, Nina brought their children to Hans's mother's home in Oakland. Soon after, Hans and Nina got into a heated argument. During this confrontation, Hans ended her life by cutting off her ability to breathe. He then hid her remains in a shallow grave near his mother's home. They stayed there for several months without being found. Nina was reported missing on September 5, 2006. Her minivan was later discovered abandoned with groceries still inside. This added to the confusion and worry. After Nina went missing, Hans's actions drew attention. Neighbors noticed him cleaning his driveway and his car very thoroughly. This made people suspect he was trying to get rid of something important. Despite these concerns, Hans insisted he had nothing to do with what happened. The investigation into Nina's disappearance grew stronger over time. In October 2006, Hans was taken into custody. Investigators had found red stains in his home and car. DNA testing could not confirm exactly whose it was, but the discovery still raised suspicion. Hans was formally accused of taking Nina's life and was kept in custody without the option of bail. During his trial, Hans chose to defend himself. He argued that he had acted to protect their children, claiming that Nina was harming them. This explanation was met with doubt from both the jury and the public. In April 2008, Hans was found guilty of ending Nina's life with intent. Later, a deal was made to reduce the charge to a lesser form of the offense. In exchange, Hans agreed to reveal where Nina's remains were. On July 7, 2008, Hans led authorities to the shallow grave where she had been buried. This finally gave her family the answers they had been waiting for. On August 29, 2008, Hans received a sentence of 15 years to life in prison. This was part of the plea deal, which also meant he gave up the right to appeal. The judge said this arrangement was meant to give closure to Nina's family and avoid the expense and uncertainty of another trial. At the sentencing, Hans said he was sorry. He admitted the harm he had caused to his children and the pain he brought to Nina's family. In 2012, a civil court jury awarded $60 million to Hans's two children in a wrongful loss lawsuit. Hans again represented himself, repeating that he acted to protect them. The jury's decision reflected the long-lasting damage his actions caused to his family. While in prison, Hans has taken part in programs to improve his social skills. He has expressed that he wants to be less of a danger to others. In one letter from prison, he wrote, "I am very sorry for my actions. A proper apology would be off topic for this forum, but available to any who ask." Next, we go to a legal dynasty whose polished image hid a financial scheme worth millions. Alex Murdaugh was born in 1967. He came from a well-known family in South Carolina's legal world. His great-grandfather and father all worked as solicitors in the 14th Circuit District. This role is similar to a district attorney. Because of this, the Murdaugh family had a lot of influence in the area. Alex followed the same career path. He became a successful personal injury lawyer in the family's firm, Peters Murdaugh Parker Eltsroth Detrick, also called PMPED. Later, the firm changed its name to the Parker Law Group. It was known for aggressive legal strategies and winning large settlements. This brought the family even more wealth and power. But behind this success, Alex was involved in many unlawful activities. In 2021, he became a suspect in the passing of his wife Maggie and their son Paul. This happened at the family's Moselle estate. The case drew national attention because of the family's history and Alex's position in the legal field. On June 7, 2021, Maggie, who was 52, and Paul, who was 22, were discovered with serious injuries caused by gunfire. They had been harmed with more than one type of firearm. At first, Alex claimed he was not there. He said he had gone to visit his sick father, but evidence later showed otherwise. A video surfaced from Paul's phone. It placed Alex at the Moselle property shortly before the incident. Paul's voice could be heard in the background. This broke apart Alex's alibi and made him appear more involved. Investigators believed the reason for the incident could be linked to Alex's growing money problems. He was facing several lawsuits and had been accused of taking millions from clients. Some thought he was trying to create sympathy or distract from his financial troubles. Others believed he wanted insurance payouts. No matter the reason, the event shocked the community. The trial began in January 2023. The prosecution showed evidence that Alex's statements were inconsistent. Forensic evidence also went against his claims. The defense argued the evidence was only circumstantial, and that Alex was targeted because of his family's reputation. The jury took less than 3 hours to reach a decision. They found Alex guilty on all charges: 2 counts of causing the loss of life and 2 counts of having a weapon while committing a violent act. Judge Clifton Newman said the evidence was overwhelming. Alex was given 2 life sentences, to be served one after the other, with no chance of release. After this trial, Alex faced more legal trouble. He was charged with more than 90 counts of financial wrongdoing. These included breach of trust, money laundering, and forgery. Investigations showed he took millions from clients and misused money from his law firm. In April 2024, he was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison for these financial offenses. This sentence would run at the same time as his life sentences. During his sentencing for the case, Alex spoke to the court. He continued to say he was innocent. He repeated a phrase he had used earlier, "a tangled web we weave," suggesting that his lies had caused a complicated situation. Today, Alex Murdaugh is serving his time at the Kirkland Correctional Institution in Columbia, South Carolina. The next man claimed veteran status, won $500 million, and ended up on trial for his wife's passing. Braulio Marcelo Castillo once led a Virginia-based IT company called Strong Castle. The company gained national attention after receiving around $500 million in contracts with the IRS. Castillo claimed veteran status. He based this on a short time at the U.S. Military Academy Preparatory School, where he left due to an ankle injury. That claim helped him qualify for special set-aside contracts. Later, many people argued that his claims were misleading. He testified before Congress. During that hearing, Senator Tammy Duckworth questioned his account of a serious injury. She pointed out that he had gone on to play competitive football afterward. Investigators also discovered that the disadvantaged office he listed for contract preference was often empty during inspections. This raised more concerns about whether he was being honest. Castillo denied doing anything wrong. He said he fairly competed for every contract. Castillo attended the prep school in New Jersey for 1 year before leaving. After that, he studied at the University of San Diego and played as a linebacker on the football team. He later married Michelle, and together they had 5 children. Some of them were adopted and some biological. The family was also part of the McLean Bible Church community. By 2013, problems in the marriage had grown worse. Michelle sought a protective order. She described incidents where Castillo pressured her into unwanted situations, locked her in rooms, and spoke to her in cruel ways. The court granted her the house and custody of the children. Castillo could only visit for dinner and was not allowed inside the home. Their divorce turned bitter. Michelle was seeking about $14,000 per month in support. In March 2014, Michelle celebrated qualifying for the Boston Marathon. But only days later, something shocking happened. Around 8:10 in the evening, surveillance footage showed a jogger entering her home. Family friends and the oldest son identified that jogger as Castillo. That night, Michelle lost her life. She was found hanging in a basement shower. At first, it looked like she had taken her own life, but the medical examiner ruled otherwise. The report showed she had been suffocated and the scene had been staged. Castillo's DNA was discovered on her bed and sweatshirt, even though he claimed he hadn't entered the house in years. Testimony from their 11-year-old son revealed another detail. He said Castillo had once offered him gold if he would give him the home's security code. This showed planning and intent. Castillo faced charges. These included unlawfully ending Michelle's life, entering the home with intent to cause harm, and violating the protective order. His defense argued that Michelle may have ended her own life, and he insisted he was innocent. But the evidence told another story. The jury reviewed DNA findings, the video footage, testimony about the protective order, and the words of the children. One child even wrote, "You deny what happened to Mom. We all know it." In court, Castillo showed no reaction, while the children and Michelle's loved ones spoke. After more than 9 hours of deliberation, the jury reached a decision. They found Castillo guilty on all charges. Judge Stephen Sinkovich sentenced him to life in prison with no chance of parole, plus 16 additional years. The extra years were for entering the home and for breaking the protective order. The next man walked into some of the wealthiest retirement communities in Texas, and no one realized he was hunting their residents. If you find stories like these important, consider subscribing. Billy Kipkorir Kemmermere was born in 1972 in a rural area of Kenya. He came from a big family. Local reports say he was one of many children. His father held a leadership role in their community. As an adult, Kemmermere moved to the United States. He eventually settled in North Texas. He worked in jobs related to caregiving, and in other businesses that connected him with older adults. Over time, he lived and worked in neighborhoods and buildings where many well-off seniors lived. His jobs gave him regular access to places and people that most outsiders could not reach. That access shaped his daily life. It also became the reason investigators were later able to link him to certain incidents. Friends and neighbors from his earlier years described him as someone who kept to himself. Some saw him as simply quiet, while others thought he was intentionally private. In the United States, court records and news reports say he was able to move freely through independent living communities and private homes. He would present himself as a helper, a maintenance worker, or someone with a legitimate reason to be there. This made it easy for him to blend in with staff and family members who trusted him. Between about 2016 and 2018, a series of unexpected passings among older women in Dallas and nearby suburbs began to raise questions. Many of these passings were first marked as natural or unexplained because of the ages of the women. However, investigators began to notice unusual patterns. Valuables, especially jewelry, were missing from homes and apartments in independent living communities after residents had passed away. The patterns suggested that someone had been taking advantage of the women's vulnerability. This led law enforcement to open a focused investigation. According to reports, Chemermir is accused of going into senior living facilities or private apartments while pretending to be staff or a visitor. He would get close to women who lived alone. Then, investigators say, he would use a pillow to stop them from breathing. Afterward, jewelry or other valuables would be missing. Some women were later found in their beds. He is accused of choosing women who are older, sometimes frail, and living by themselves. Authorities say he would sell or pawn the valuables for cash. These details came out during court proceedings and in the reporting that followed his arrest and trials. The key break in the case came when a 91-year-old woman survived an incident and told police what happened. Her account gave investigators a description, which led them to surveillance footage and purchase records. Officers later found Chemermir with jewelry and cash that connected him to some of the women. Using that evidence, they linked him to two passings that became the focus of court cases. The survival of one elderly woman turned what had been a series of cold cases into a case they could take to trial. Prosecutors brought a large number of charges. At one point, he faced more than 20 counts connected to the passings of older women. The state chose to focus on two of those cases, which had the strongest evidence. In separate trials in Dallas County, juries found him responsible for the passing of Luthi Harris and Mary Brooks. Each trial ended with a sentence of life in prison, with no chance of release. These verdicts came after weeks of testimony from investigators, family members, and medical experts. Some people wondered why there were only two convictions when so many cases were under review. Prosecutors explained that they focused on the strongest cases first. Early on, some counties considered seeking the highest possible penalty, but later decisions, along with the fact that he already faced life sentences, led them to stop pursuing that option. Officials felt further trials would not change the fact that he would remain in prison for life. In May 2022, and again later in 2023, Chemermir was moved into the Texas state prison system to serve his sentences. On September 19, 2023, prison officials said he had been found unresponsive in his cell at the Caulfield Unit in Tennessee Colony. Authorities said his cellmate, who was serving time for another serious conviction, had been identified as the one who harmed him. The state inspector general began an investigation. News outlets reported his passing and noted that he had passed while serving his life sentences. The impact was deeply personal. Many of the women were in their 70s, 80s, or older. They had been living in communities where they expected safety and care. Families had trusted the staff and systems in those facilities. When those systems failed, they faced both loss and a long, exhausting legal process. During trials, survivors and relatives spoke about the private, everyday lives of the women. These statements helped convince juries that the passings were not natural, but the result of another person's actions. Even now, there are unanswered questions. Investigators continue to review older cases to see if they were connected. Experts and community advocates have called for stronger background checks, better tracking of visitors in senior facilities, and improved communication between health agencies, care operators, and law enforcement. Others have asked why standard investigations did not detect the patterns sooner, given that older residents often pass away in such settings. The case has pushed institutions to re-examine their procedures and led families to think differently about protecting their loved ones in care facilities. Up next is a public official, a damaging article, and a reporter who wouldn't back down. Robert "Rob" Tellez was a local elected official in Clark County, Nevada. He served as the Clark County Public Administrator. This office manages estates and guardianship matters. Tellis built a public profile after graduating from UNLV's Boyd School of Law. He worked in local government and probate-related matters. Over time, he became a familiar figure in county politics. For a period, he had influence in the small world of local administration. The Review-Journal and other news outlets followed his rise. They reported on complaints and tensions within his office. These issues later became the subject of investigative reporting. On Labor Day weekend of 2022, veteran investigative reporter Jeff German was found outside his home with fatal injuries caused by a sharp object. Police focused on the fact that German had recently written critical articles about problems in the public administrator's office. Those articles included claims about an unhealthy work environment and an inappropriate relationship involving Tellis. Investigators reviewed surveillance video. It showed a person wearing a straw hat and sneakers in German's neighborhood. Police later searched Tellis's home. There, they found items and DNA evidence linked to the case. DNA from German's hands and fingernails matched Tellis. Clothing items seen in the footage were discovered cut into pieces at his residence. Within days, police took Tellis into custody. Investigators moved quickly because of several factors. The footage placed a specific hat and shoe style near German's home. Police found matching items during the search of Tellis' property. Forensic tests tied Tellis's DNA to material recovered from German. Together, these formed the main structure of the state's case. As for motive, prosecutors said there was a clear trigger. German's reporting had revealed internal problems in Tellis' office. It had also included claims that hurt his reputation. Soon after those reports, Tellis lost his bid for re-election in the Democratic primary. Prosecutors argued Tellis saw German's work as a threat to his career and personal life. The defense claimed others could have wanted to harm German. They also argued that evidence might have been planted or misread. Tellis denied causing German's injuries and said he was being framed. The trial took place in 2024. It lasted 11 days. The state presented video, recovered items, witness accounts, and forensic findings linking Tellis to the scene. Tellis testified for several days. His lawyers suggested other possible suspects. They argued the evidence did not directly prove he caused the harm. After deliberation, the jury found Tellis guilty of first-degree homicide. They recommended a sentence with eligibility for parole after 20 years. The judge added enhancements for use of a dangerous object, waiting for the victim, and because of the victim's age, these changes increased the minimum time before parole to about 28 years. Tellis has filed an appeal. During sentencing, Tellis again denied involvement. He told the court, "I did not harm Mr. German," and expressed condolences to the family. The judge followed the jury's recommendation and included the enhancements. The prosecution's case included both direct and indirect proof. Forensic testing matched Tellis's DNA to material from the scene and from under German's fingernails. Surveillance video and recovered items matched the appearance and timeline of the person in the footage to Tellis. Investigators said the clothing in the footage was later found in altered condition at Tellis' home. The defense disputed these connections. They suggested the findings could have been explained in other ways. However, the jury accepted the state's version of events. Prosecutors argued this was a planned act. They pointed to the footage showing a person arriving in advance. They also noted the legal charge of waiting in ambush. The court applied an enhancement for premeditation. The defense disagreed, saying there were gaps in phone tracking and other details. The verdict and sentencing suggest the court believed the act had been planned. Jeff German had spent decades reporting on public wrongdoing, courts, and organized groups. His passing drew national attention. This was partly because an elected official was accused, and partly because it appeared tied to investigative reporting about local government issues. Press freedom groups and journalist organizations followed the case closely. In Las Vegas, it sparked new conversations about how elected offices are managed and the risks reporters face when exposing misconduct. Tellis remains in custody while his appeal process begins. Records show he submitted a handwritten notice of intent to appeal. This could raise legal arguments about how the evidence was handled. Meanwhile, German's family and colleagues continue to remember the work and dedication of a reporter who spent his career covering difficult stories. The next man once ran a nationwide network worth $100 million a year and now has celebrities calling for his freedom. Larry Hoover was born on November 30th, 1950 in Jackson, Mississippi. When he was about 4 years old, his family moved to Chicago. As a teenager, he left school before graduating. He joined a group called the Supreme Gangsters. At first, he was involved in street theft and stealing. Over time, the activities became more aggressive. By the time he was in his late teens, Hoover teamed up with David Barksdale. They merged their groups into one, called the Black Gangster Disciple Nation. Later, this group became known simply as the Gangster Disciples. When Barksdale passed away in 1974, Hoover became the main leader. Under his leadership, the group gained strong influence and control in Chicago's South Side. In February of 1973, an incident changed the course of Hoover's life. That evening, William Pookie Young, a 19-year-old street-level dealer, was taken by force and shot in an alley. This happened after he was accused of taking from the group. The order reportedly came from Hoover. Afterward, Hoover went into hiding. But in September of 1973, he was stopped while driving a stolen truck. He was immediately linked to the case. By December of that same year, Hoover and Andrew Howard were found guilty. They were given a sentence of 150 to 200 years in state prison. While serving time at Stateville Prison, Hoover appeared to take a different approach. He offered safety to other inmates and spoke against violence. He encouraged members of the Gangster Disciples to focus on education and skills training. He even redefined the letters GD to stand for Growth Development. The group began promoting voter registration, community outreach, and nonprofit work. But there was growing doubt. Authorities questioned whether this change was genuine. Some believed that behind these positive actions, he was still running the group's illegal operations from prison. By the mid-1990s, a large undercover investigation began. It was called Operation Headache. Through recorded calls and informants, authorities said Hoover was organizing extortion, moving illegal funds, controlling large-scale illegal substance operations, and leading the group from behind bars. Prosecutors claimed the group had tens of thousands of members in 35 states. They also said the operation brought in around $100 million each year. In 1997, Hoover was convicted on 40 federal charges, including conspiracy, extortion, and running a continuing illegal operation. He received several life sentences, bringing his total to 6. He was moved to ADX Florence in Colorado, a high-security prison for the country's most dangerous inmates. Over the years, Hoover gained supporters. Some public figures, including Kanye West, Ye, spoke in his favor. They argued that he had changed and pushed for his release. Despite appeals and attempts to reduce his sentence, his requests were denied, even under the First Step Act. On May 28, 2025, President Donald Trump reduced Hoover's federal life sentences. But this did not mean he was free. He still has to serve his Illinois state sentence of 150 to 200 years for the 1973 case. Because this happened before Illinois ended discretionary parole in 1978, there is a possibility of parole. The next family that looked perfect from the outside was about to become the center of America's most watched trial. Lyle and Eric Menendez were the sons of Jose and Mary Louise Kitty Menendez. Their parents were a wealthy couple living in Beverly Hills. The family's mansion looked like the picture of success. Jose was born in Cuba. He worked his way up to become a top entertainment executive. He held a senior position at RCA Records before moving into the film industry. His career earned the family millions, placing them in elite Los Angeles circles during the 1980s. The Menendez brothers grew up surrounded by wealth. Their home had tennis courts, luxury cars, and they attended expensive schools. But beneath the perfect image, the family was not happy. Accounts later revealed strict discipline, high expectations, and according to the brothers, a hidden world of mistreatment that would become central to their defense years later. Lyle, the older brother, was born on January 10, 1968, in New York. Eric, the younger, was born on November 27, 1970, in New Jersey. By the late 1980s, they lived in Beverly Hills, enjoying the benefits of their father's powerful career. They had access to almost anything money could buy. But something happened that would shock California. It was August 20th, 1989, a quiet Sunday evening. Jose and Kitty were relaxing in the den after a day of sailing. Suddenly, Lyle and Eric entered the room with shotguns. They fired at their father, ending his life instantly. Kitty tried to run, but slipped on the polished floor. The brothers fired several more times until she was also gone. In total, they fired 15 rounds. Prosecutors said the reason was greed. The brothers knew they would inherit the family fortune. Within weeks, they began spending heavily. Lyle bought a $64,000 Porsche and expensive watches. Eric hired a tennis coach and went on costly trips. Their spending reached hundreds of thousands of dollars in just months. The brothers told a different story. They claimed years of severe physical mistreatment by their father and emotional torment from their mother. They said they acted because they feared for their lives, not for money. After the incident, they appeared devastated. They told police they had gone to the movies and then to a festival that night. At first, detectives had no leads. There was no sign of forced entry, and nothing valuable had been taken. The case changed direction when Eric spoke to his psychologist, Dr. Jerome Oziel. The psychologist's mistress later went to the police, saying she was worried for her safety and revealed what Eric had told him. In March 1990, both brothers were arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree taking a life in conspiracy. Their trials became a national spectacle. Cameras in the courtroom made it one of the first high-profile trials broadcast on daytime TV. The defense focused on their claims of mistreatment. They described in detail the acts their father allegedly committed. They said their home was full of fear, secrecy, and control. They claimed the incident happened because they believed their parents were about to harm them, not because of a plan. The prosecution said they were lying to avoid punishment. They portrayed them as spoiled and motivated by greed, pointing to their spending spree as proof. In the first trials, the juries could not agree, leading to mistrials. In 1995, both brothers were tried together. This time, the judge limited the mistreatment testimony, ruling much of it irrelevant. In 1996, they were found guilty of first degree if taking a life in conspiracy. The jury rejected the idea that it was self-defense. They were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge called their actions calculated and merciless, noting their parents were unarmed and unaware of the danger. As of 2025, Lyle is 56 years old and Eric is 53. They are both at the Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility in San Diego, California. For many years, they were kept in separate prisons. They were reunited in 2018 after nearly 20 years apart. In prison, Lyle has taken part in counseling programs. Eric has joined creative writing and outreach projects. Both still say they were victims of long-term mistreatment. Their case continues to spark debate, with some believing their punishment was too severe. Because they did not face a capital penalty, there was no final meal or official last statement. At sentencing, Lyle said, "I'm very, very sorry. I wish I could take it back. I loved my parents." Eric added, "I agree with Lyle. I wish I could take it back.